But the worst of it is knowing that my son wanted to be with me, and yet my ex made it very unbearable. I mean, it got to a point where he would just stop visitation. He would just, because I would drop my son off, and he would just be so in uproar and so upset about the whole issue. And then Matt would call me and say, oh, he's not coming this weekend. So then I started missing weekends. Then it was, oh, well, Matthew doesn't want to see you. He's 5. How can you tell me he doesn't want to see me? One minute he wants to see me, and the next minute you're telling me he doesn't want to see me? This doesn't add up. This just does not make sense at all. So back to court I went, talking about enforcing my visitation rights. And I ended up getting pregnant with Nicholas, my husband and I's son. And it was really hard. I had a lot of hip problems and stuff. And I went through a lot of different issues with him while I was pregnant. And I was stressed. I was stressed my whole pregnancy with Nicholas. And it was over Matthew. I was so sick over the whole entire thing. And Matt just would not let me see my son. He would do anything and everything and say anything to have that child not see me. I was the terriblest person in the world. I was the worst mother in the world. And that couldn't be further from the truth. And so I had to deal with that. And my doctors were telling me that I needed to not stress out. I needed to, relax while I was pregnant. And that was very hard to do. So finally I had the baby and I went right back to court. I had Nicholas and I went right back to court. I maybe had him, he was 3 weeks old. I finally went and filed another motion, and we went back to court, and Matt was like, he's afraid of her. He doesn't want to see her. He screams every time, and he's just afraid to be with her. And I could not believe what I was hearing. And the judge just said, okay, supervised visitation. Matt wanted me to have supervised visitations with my son, and he got it. They didn't find me to be unfit. I did nothing wrong. So I don't understand why I, who just had a baby, had to have supervised visitation. It was just weird, and just, I couldn't believe it, that the courts just granted him everything he wanted once again. And here I am, a mother, just I could not believe it. So I just went along with it. Whatever I could do to see Matthew, I was going to do. And my father ended up being the supervisor. And this is just another issue that took place. And I'm just going to really quick go over this with you guys. Mind you, through all of this, never once was I proven to be unfit. Never. They didn't take my son away from me because I was an alcoholic. They didn't take him away from me and give my ex, Matt, custody of our son because I was in drugs, or I had to go to rehab, or I was arrested, I just made an honest mistake, didn't show up to court, and they just handed him off. I was the worst parent in the world and never once had to prove that I was unfit. Never once. And I cannot figure this out to this day. Cannot understand it. Cannot. So anyway, I went along with the supervised visitations. Still couldn't wrap my head around all this. But whatever I could do to see him. So the first visit my dad brought him went great. Matthew, and he enjoyed the visits. He wasn't afraid. He wasn't afraid. And he was happy. He was happy to see his brother. And this was not a kid who was afraid of me at all. And it's pretty sad because when he would leave, and I only got a few hours. I didn't, I didn't have like day and a night. I had a few hours with my son. Can you imagine? And he was 6 at this time. A few hours. I could always see my kid a few hours, like every other weekend. Devastating. I just want to cry right now. I mean, you can't even understand. So he left, whatever. So then the following weekend, I don't know what happened. I don't know if it was a phone call I got or something, but I believe it was my father was coming to bring Matthew. He was actually on his way, and we lived about an hour from Matthew, so it took him a little bit of time to get there, and it was in the morning, and I just remember having a phone conversation with my ex, Matt, and the conversation wasn't a very nice conversation by the end of the conversation because Matt decided to put our son. Meanwhile, let me just tell you, we share joint legal custody. We still share joint legal custody to this day. So it's not like he has full custody or I don't have any rights. We have joint legal custody, and I have all the rights he does, except for the fact that I'm the non-custodial parent and he is the custodial parent. And, so whatever happens with our son, he should be confiding in me. Just because I have this supervised visitation doesn't mean that I don't have any rights to my son. So now my ex is telling me that he put our son in counseling and he won't give me any information. I remember this conversation like it was yesterday. And this was the conversation we were having, and it was taking place while Matthew was en route to my house to have visits with Nicholas, Joseph, and I. Mainly me, but it was my husband's and I's apartment, and we did have our son there. And the conversation got ugly when I told Matt, you can't put him in counseling without even talking to me first. How could you put our 6-year-old son in counseling? And like, I don't have no rights. Like, I don't have a say of where he goes to counseling. I don't have a say. I don't even get to know where you're putting him in counseling. I don't know nothing. I'm not a part of this. But meanwhile, this is I'm the reason why you're putting him in counseling, and I don't know. So this is like, so that really pissed him off. That really pissed Matt off, that he didn't like the fact that I wanted to know where he was taking our son to counseling. He didn't like the fact that I was upset because I had the right to know, and he just wanted to do everything on his own, which was not his right. It was my right that he was taking away from me illegally. Okay? And so by court order, my father was to bring Matthew to see me every other weekend at such and such time and till such and such time. And that's my visitation. So nobody or anybody can interfere with that visitation unless it's court ordered that there is no visitation. Well, Matt, my ex, being spiteful and mad and angry with me because he did not like what I had to say, called up my father and told my father that he had to bring Matthew back home. And if he did not bring Matthew back home, that he was going to have the cops waiting at the apartment for him. So 1, he threatened my father. 2, he's violating the visitation order. And 3, he did it. He got exactly what he wanted. My father turned around, and meanwhile I'm waiting, and a couple hours go by, and I'm like, where is my father? Where's Matthew? I call my father, and he says to me, we're on our way back to Matt's. I'm bringing Matthew back home. That's when my father started to tell me that Matt said that I threatened him, and that I was very nasty on the phone, and he didn't want Matthew there to come see me because I was in this terrible mood and I was angry, and that I had to bring Matthew back home. And he told me that Matthew was very upset because he did want to come see me. He wanted to come and visit with me and did not understand why he could not come visit with me. All he knew as a child was that he had to go back home and he could not see me. So I believe that my father did tell me that Matthew had said some nasty things to him, like, I hate you. He was very mad at my father for having to bring him home. And as a 6-year-old little boy, you don't know. You don't know what's going on. Who knows? Now he knows he's got to go back home, and who knows? He thinks it's my fault. But ever since then, it has been an ongoing battle. I had to get a lawyer. I went to court. He should have been held contempt of court for violating my visitation right. He was not held contempt of court. I mean, this is an ongoing thing. And it's been an ongoing thing. Supervised visitation after supervised visitation, going to parenting classes, going to counseling after counseling after counseling, and not one counselor could say or give me one good reason why my son did not want to see me, other than he thinks you abandoned him and you're mean. Those were the reasons why Matthew didn't want to see me. But it's funny that this same child of mine, my son, wanted to come see me, put up a fit and a fuss with my father because he didn't get to see me. But then all of a sudden, reverse roles. Slowly did he start drifting away from me, further and further and further away. And so I kept going back to court and going back to court and going back to court, and nothing. Got nothing. Go to counseling, go to counseling, go to counseling, go to counseling. But the real situation is that this child, our son, my son, has been totally alienated from me since the time he has had custody, that he has gained custody of our son. This has been going on. Now we're talking, he's 18 now. So we're going back a long time. We're going back a long period of time that this has been going on. So I have other things to share, but